Hello, my name is Jana Skokan. I'm the co-founder of Frogeex. I want to welcome you and thank you for joining our Frogeex YouTube channel today. If you like the content that we're sharing and the ideas that we're discussing, please like it, comment on it, and share it. And most importantly, come and join us on our live events. You have the opportunity to discuss with experts, exchange with like-minded people, and expand your perspectives all around topics related to sustainable building, sustainable living. And I also want to encourage you to click the little notification bell, subscribe to our channel, and never ever miss another episode of Frogeex Green Tech Talks in the future. I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next one. Thank you very much, Praveen, for joining us today on our next episode of Frogeex Green Tech Talk. So just for the viewers and listeners today, let me give a quick introduction on what Frogeex is and why we are here. So Frogeex is a green tech marketplace. What we are doing is creating a place for companies, businesses, experts that come together in an international environment. And we want to enable consumers, buyers from whether it's a business or it's a private person, having easy and fast and transparent access to solutions all related to sustainable building and sustainable living. Now, today we have our dear guest with us, Praveen Gupta, and you may ask yourself now, what is the connection? So the topic today is climate change, risk, and also we have it included over there, resilience, because it's for us a little bit connected, and we just want to take you on the journey with us. Especially Praveen is going to share definitely some interesting insights, I'm pretty sure, on his experience and his perspective on the insurance business, on the tools that insurance as a segment has, the role that insurance has in this type of challenge that we are currently on, talking about climate change. So that's why we have him here. And let me quickly also introduce Praveen. So it's a very extensive experience that you are bringing today for our viewers, and we much appreciate you spending time with us. So Praveen is a chartered insurer, which was part of the core founding team for Alliance, a joint venture, as well as for QBE, my apologies, India joint ventures. So he's pretty much experienced in these topics, especially on non-life insurance topics. Praveen is now working especially or spending his time on teaching, writing, and speaking events of similar type of format or concept as we have today, pretty much focusing around the topic of climate-related risk and the role of insurance in this field. Definitely, I would highly recommend you to follow his page, which is the diversityblog.com. You will certainly have a reference in the video and in the comments also after the call, so you can follow up on a regular basis. I would highly recommend it because it's so much valuable information being shared there. Now, Praveen, please correct me. I'm just gonna finish this. What seems to be is that you pretty much support the idea that insurance is very important in terms of climate change, has an important role. Eventually, you can tell us more about how can insurance help to solve this urgent issue that we are in, and what is the role in setting up right measures, right actions, right procedures to basically move it to the next levels.
I like your energy, enthusiasm. In fact, I do sometimes get frustrated with the pace that we need to assume to get into fixing climate change and bringing resilience in our daily lives vis-a-vis climate change or climate emergency, which it has become today. Yeah, so the climate change, as I keep saying, historically uh, has not happened overnight. We had an industrial revolution. Europe was the heart of that. And of course, Great Britain, as we then called it, was the action spot. It spread across with all kinds of fascinating inventions and discoveries. And all these were driven by in the early days steam, but later on, as this all matured, fossil fuel started playing more and more role. Fossil fuel meant release of uh, carbon dioxide. In the early days, when the populations were small and the size of economies were limited, the whole uh, global warming process in the form of greenhouse gases that were released was very limited. But as we've seen, all this has been cumulatively working. We've reached a point where we are a population of nearly 8 billion across the globe, and the carbon dioxide levels have gone up to virtually 420 particles per million, so ppm as you call it, and that is a very dangerous level. um, we are kind of playing with the planetary systems, and it's all pushing back. So we are seeing devastating natural processes coming back, whether it's floods or droughts or all kinds of other events, glaciers melting, sea levels rising, cyclones, storms, typhoons, tornadoes, whatever that we knew from textbook is today blowing into our face. And the circularity, or rather the frequency of these events has also increased. So events which were 500 years of cycle have suddenly shrunk to, one in every 3 years, and we're not able to cope with it. So the point is, where does insurance figure into all this? And insurance, as I see it, has a very vital role, and that's why I said sometimes I'm frustrated. And why is it that insurance must do something? And is it doing something, or is it good enough? Some of the questions we will talk about. But may I just kind of put some more dotted lines for you to then provoke me to talk further?
Certainly.
So yeah, thank you.
Certainly.
So insurance basically has been what we call the handmaiden of the industry. So what is it doing? So you create machinery, you create supply chains, you create production processes, you create marketplaces, and insurance comes in and complements and supplements many of the processes to back them up as a kind of a collateral. But what really happens is insurance just does that in a kind of a blindfolded way without really being mindful of the possible implications of how we produce and sell and buy and transport and manufacture, all the nitty gritty. They are not really mindful of. So we continue to support the engine which has brought us where it is, which has now begun to hurt us. We continue supporting that. We need to now back off from there, and also remind those in these processes that, look, guys, uh, this cannot go on forever. It's hurting the planet, it's hurting the humans, it's hurting the flora and fauna, and something needs to be done. Otherwise, we'll all disappear. The sixth extinction process has been set in place, whether we like it or not. We don't want to talk about it, but that doesn't mean it's not happening. So we need to fix all this and restore the planet back to pre-industrial revolution state of health as closely as possible. So to cut my long story short, I thought this was important to set this backdrop so that those in insurance and those who want to look at opportunities in this new challenge version kind of get a sense of what is in it that they're in for.
Praveen, I would just maybe refer to some of the points which you just mentioned.
Yes.
I appreciate that you tell us how it's all connected, basically. Where do we start? What's the situation in terms of climate change? And also, I love the point where you mentioned discover the opportunities, because in the end, it's also a hidden opportunity for the industry. I would just now, before we move on to my next question, I would just push now a fact in terms of the latest report from one of our major insurers over here, Swiss Re. I mean, it's also a worldwide represented company that basically prepared a report last year on the losses that were created by catastrophes in 2021. And the kind of pattern that we see, it's, as you said, it's progressing. So we see an increasing amount of losses that is related to these catastrophes. We see it increasing year by year. That was a fourth consecutive year in a row, or as we can say in a row, where the costs are increasing. And what they clearly identified is there are gaps in how the infrastructure is being managed currently, and identified it clearly as an action point. Now that brings me maybe to my second or the next question. How can insurance as a segment act? What can they do? How they can, start being more engaged, and instead of reacting and just, as you said, being maybe following some procedures or events in the environment, not talking now about the climate environment, business environment, etc., procedures, how they can be, instead of reactive, proactive, changing that, because it's their job as well to foresee risk, to identify risk when it appears. So what do you think? What would you say?
Thank you. I think that's a very in-depth kind of inquiry you've put in place. And I'm thinking of several aspects that are emerging from it. So one is, the current methodologies. As I said, we've become like a supplement or a complementary role to the larger industry, and we need to now disassociate ourselves from it. We also need to nudge them into doing the right things. So first of all, what is it that has got us into it is our subsidiary role. But there are certain methodologies which are driving these negative dynamics. So one is, let's look at the three key things that insurers do. So one is risk management, two is underwriting, which is how you price and how you place and how much you retain, etc., of the risk that you are underwriting. And three is, of course, investment. So you get the money in, which is like a float. You keep it with you till such time you need to pay claims. So that money gets invested. The multiple strategies: short term, medium term, long term. But those investments are also very vital, and we'll touch upon them. So these three things are very important to understand, because when you risk manage, what is it that can go wrong with something. Like, for instance, if you're writing petrochemical industry, or you're writing hydrocarbon business, chemicals, you know the downside and the flip side also, as to what can go wrong by the usage of these chemicals or material. But yet you do something about it. You provide a cover to it. But it may be causing pollution, it may be causing health issues, it may be causing long-term impact to the biodiversity. All that gets sidelined. Same thing about underwriting. You price it actuarially with the actuarial input, but at the same time, you don't price the externalities, because, as I said, a lot of things we insure cause damage to environment, cause damage to people, cause long-term damage, which we sometimes don't even know. Now, whether these damages are also uh, kind of uh, internalized as uh, risks that will eventually manifest and priced accordingly? My answer is no. So we, despite knowing those possibilities, we still detach ourselves and shut ourselves, which is not a good idea. And last thing is investments. So when you invest in things which cause damage, so whether these are coal or oil or gas or industries which cause damage, if you're investing at the same time you're insuring people against the damages they cause, is bit of a not bit, it's a serious contradiction, and insurers need to begin to understand this dichotomy and act. Now my next thing would be, if you may please,
Definitely.
yeah, so basically these are the tools. How
Mm,
do you drive a sustainable behavior? Now, this is a word which is becoming a jargon, a daily jargon
mhm,
in our world, and insurers still don't talk about sustainability. It's just lip service. Only those people practicing ESG or the top management talk about sustainability. The front line is not sensitized. So,
mhm.
what can they do about it? Are
I
there
was just
tools?
about to ask this exactly.
So, are there tools with insurers?
Mhm,
And the thing is, yes, they have the tools, because all this while, when you underwrite a risk, howsoever simple or complex or complicated, you bring in modeling, you bring in actuarial science, which I mentioned, you
mhm,
bring in risk grading, you may have all kinds of other methodologies. Some of them go back to the time when I was a management trainee in the insurance industry, and I was learning the tricks of the trade. So there were things like fault tree city analysis, sorry, the PML assessment,
mhm,
and things like that. Now, these are very commonsensical things which can be applied to different scenarios. So they need not be just applied to the areas that you currently insure. You can bring a paradigm shift and apply these to climate, sustainability, biodiversity formats as well.
mhm,
But the last thing, which has become very important and which again insurers tend to sleep over, is stewardship. So if I am a big insurer, you named Swiss Re, they are one of the largest reinsurer, and they have uh, billions of dollars of funds
mhm,
which they need to hold on to till such time the claims really come home to roost, as they
mhm,
say. These investments uh, give them the power uh, to influence the investee companies.
mhm,
So, assuming I'm a reinsurer and you are one of the companies I have invested in, big time. This is not small change.
mhm,
Then, when it comes to the crunch, taking a major decision as an investor, I can influence you investees, saying that, look, I will not vote for or support your new business initiative because it harms the planet, it harms the biodiversity,
mhm,
and you cannot do this.
mhm,
Now, insurers have to begin to be assertive. All this while they've been passive, they have not been asserting themselves. And today, the investors have also uh, companies like Aviva. Aviva is a big British company, and they are big fund manager as well. So
mhm,
investors act both as an insurer. I mean, insurers act both as an investor, as an insurer as well as an investor. So when it comes to the investing role, they tend to shy away from being demanding upon their investee companies. So Aviva, for instance, has started asserting itself, and it also wants the bosses of these investees companies, their pays to be linked to sustainability goals.
mhm,
It is the latest big investment firm to ramp up the pressure on corporations in a bid to make them clean up their acts. So all this is happening. The insurers have the tools, the insurers have the power, and it's just that they still lack the will. If they fix that, I think we will move in the right direction.
I mean, there is so much valuable information and also the perspective. So again, appreciate it. I mean, what triggered my attention during your explanation of the situation was the influence part, being more assertive, and what I would add to your point is also the financial and reputational risk that is connected also to insurance companies, because it was a word that also popped up for me when you said they're passive. So reactive, being passive, and actually having the tools in hand to be able to orient maybe also the companies that they are working with. Because if we, for example, would take, just to also maybe be a little bit more practical and have a real example. So if I would be a producer, maybe of a product that is, at the moment, there are eventually alternatives to produce it in a more sustainable way. However, I have facilities that do not accomplish standards of, for example, clean water management, just to say it like it is, which presents apparently different type of risks for public safety, because I mean, if you discharge, for example, untreated water, it can contaminate soil, waterways, and you have all these elements of also impact on the health for people, potentially also fauna, as you mentioned, nature itself, etc. So this is one thing, one element. Would there be also any kind of reputational risk that you would see the company may have, just they would eventually appreciate to be alerted on by the insurance company, just saying, but and if, I mean, so first part of the question, and second part of the question, how can the insurance company at all get to such a position that they know about the full supply chain, about the procedures in the company? How, is there any gap, or do you see it smooth? Usually it doesn't work this way, maybe just to have a kind of, experience or your view on that.
Thank you. So reputation is certainly on the line all the time. Today the awareness levels are different in different countries. You look at the United States of America. All this while there's been severe kind of gap between two sides of the society. It's like one who don't believe there is anything like climate change, and two who are highly polarized and very much aware about climate change and want to do something very radical. And it all depends which side of the politics plays a dominant role. Shift from Trump to Biden has seen the shift from those who believe there is nothing like climate change to those who believe something needs to be done urgently, and it borders activism. So basically, if since all that has triggered a lot of daily battle on the front of making it happen, making sustainability happen. Anyone erring on the wrong side is bound to be kind of, I would say, crucified on the reputation scale. And companies can really kind of fall, not only in terms of their ratings, but in terms of their stock price, in terms of consumer buying habits, in terms of the Generation Z or Gen Z and millennials boycotting those products. So there are a whole lot of these things happening in the global marketplace. Or you have the lesser developed countries of Africa or Pacific Islands, or the growing economies of Asia, Southeast Asia, Far East, and the other similar economies who are struggling and struggling in terms of getting their act right, whether it's the economy, whether it's prosperity, or whether it is sustainability. So they're still torn within that framework. But what's happening, Jana, there is that uh, there's segments that need to be leveraged, and increasingly people are realizing that these are things that can be done to bring it on track. All insurers have to do is align themselves. Like for instance, um, it's not that this will happen first time. Take some specialty lines, as we call it in insurance. So whether it's life sciences or space research or some esoteric area where scientists and the technicians and the financial agencies all need to work together to understand the return on investment, to understand the larger implications, the good, bad, and ugly. They've been collaborating. Whether it's pharma, whether it's gene therapy, whether it's life insurance, non-life insurance, or health insurance, everyone collaborates. The actuaries collaborate. Why can't we apply ourselves similarly on areas of climate change? Let me give you a small example. Car seat belt. Of course, the insurers didn't invent it, but the moment insurers threw their weight, saying that we cannot do without, uh, we will not insure car passengers or drivers unless they wear seatbelts, because that damages our profitability. It is bad for the user, it is bad for the insurer, bad for public interest. So we have to insist that people have to wear seatbelts, and seatbelts happen. So it's a very small example, but it had such big implications, not just in the US of A or Europe, but all of the world. Same thing happens in mitigating of climate related risk. If insurers were to insist, no, this industry is bad, we will not insure. This industry is somewhere in between, it need to do this. And I'll give you a few examples. So if it does this, it aligns ourselves to achieving the net zero goal. Same thing happens with what I call leveraging diversity. Now, why diversity? Because if you see the climate change implications, who are the people most affected? Maybe it doesn't apply as much to the developed world, but how much of the population is developed world? It's the developing world and not so developing world which is most impacted. The people on front line are women, children, the young people, the indigenous people. Now, unless you bring them into the discussion, into the decision making, we saw that the COP26 generally ignored this segment. The moment you realize they're ignoring this segment, you realize that uh, the outcome is not going to be impactful. And impactful is what we need insurers to be. Again, if you look at the three elephants, as I call them, in the insurance space, it's as it is in the larger economy, it's housing, nutrition, and mobility. So if your houses are emanating carbon and they're not eco-friendly or sustainable, if your nutrition is such that at all stages, during the growth stage, agriculture, the seeds you use, the soil you use, the fertilizer you use, to who eventually eats it, and how does it impact their health. It's all very, very important, because it could emanate carbon dioxide, it could emanate methane, it could cause serious health issues. And insurers would eventually pay for all this. But the insurers have to realize, and mobility, cars, two-wheelers, other forms of transportation, aviation, everyone uses aviation fuel, which is nothing but refined petrol. And that also emits a lot of greenhouse gases. So how do you fix them? Unless you recognize them and do something about it, put your foot down, your reputation is at risk. Not only your reputation, but it's an existential issue. So at some stage, leave aside the reputation. If you keep on doing this, you may cease to exist, because if life on planet is under threat and eventually goes extinct, who's going to be impacted? It's like nuclear war. People used to say we will insure against nuclear war, or the nuclear radiation. But if there is a nuclear war, all of us would be gone. What good would that insurance be? So these are all various, I would say, grades of risk that we are inviting upon ourselves and have problem with. And I'd like to quickly add that there are things that as a community we can do. We need to design as insurers our products and solutions which are community centric rather than individual centric. You and I have spoken about it in the past. Buildings are one of the largest source of carbon dioxide emission. And I was just going through these numbers, and these are staggering, that if you have to work on net zero, you have to start addressing and retrofitting your homes in Europe at a great pace. And the pace amounts to 15,000 houses per day for the next 30 years, according to some of the estimates. And these numbers are all available. Same thing happens with supply chain emissions. If you look at how the products move, everyone says, okay, I'm carbon free. But when it comes to your supply chain, the problem lies there, not inside your home. The home is, if you to look at the notional extension, then comes in the supply chain, and the supply chain is what brings in the problems. So I can go on and on, but what you need is to do something. At this hour of challenge, insurers can definitely do something very, very material, not just by saying, no, we will not do this, but by saying, yes, we will not do this, but we insist you do it this way. So they will not only stop something bad from happening, but they can also initiate something good for happening. Then they can translate that into their products and solutions, how they price it, how do they incentivize the customer, how do they incentivize the distributor, how do you can have the bonuses and malices, which they have had always in all kinds of products. So if you tell the food companies you will not produce this, sugar is bad, fast food is bad. If you were to sell this, then it's going to cause health problems. Or if you are going to bring food produced from, say, new agricultural fields in the Amazon area or in parts of Indonesia where there used to be forests. You cut the forest and you put in palm oil. You grew all kinds of soya bean and whatever else. That is causing damage to the planet. That is causing damage to the health of the consumers. We are not going to insure it. And we insist, if it is bad for health, we will also put a condition in our health insurance policy that any such food, if consumed, is going to be something like, say, smoking cigarettes. If you look at 30, 40 years ago, nobody bothered about smoking cigarettes. I remember traveling on aeroplanes and there used to be
people smoking
inside.
Everywhere.
Exactly.
Exactly.
And so everyone else is inhaling the smoke. So not only is the smoker's health going bad, but the people in the neighborhood, for no fault of theirs, as third-party smokers, we were all being affected. So the corrective actions have cleaned up that, but that cleaning is not good enough. So innovation is required, and of course, there's sometimes I bring in the jargon because insurers still shy away from it. I keep saying circularity. So unless you recognize that climate change is not just an energy issue, but also a carbon footprint issue. Every year we consume 100 gigaton of resources. And sadly, we only circulate 8.6% of that back to the economy every year. So there's so much that needs to be incentivized. And insurers can say, okay, you're going to use this, but tell me your plan. How will you bring circularity into this so that this goes back into nature? This then nature then produces something further, which then comes back to you. We will not insure it unless we have a plan. And if you have a plan, this is the bonus for you. If you don't have a plan, it's all malice. We will not insure. So, these kinds of tools have to come into play. And innovation, lastly, uh, cement is one of the biggest causes of environmental damage. Now, I just remember reading about a company called Betroller, and Betroller has come up with a low carbon innovation and a sustainable alternative to cement. It has listed itself on NASDAQ. So why can't insurers say that if you were to build your home with this material, we'll give you this kind of discount, or this kind of incentive, or we will give you a cover at the price of 1 year for 2 years, or whatever, which makes business sense. Business sense not only for their balance sheet, but the larger planetary balance sheet, which is what matters to all of us. So we can go on and on. And insurers, if they're awake to these possibilities, can really make wonderful things happen.
I have, Praveen, several points. I was taking notes while you were explaining and sharing with us your experience, and also the examples, very, very interesting. 3 points that kind of form for me the base which I heard out of what you said, which is, I have a big question to you, and I would just appreciate, but that's going to be in the end the question to you. Why do you think is it like this? Why don't we see more action? I would just park it, like, for some maybe food for thoughts. However, what I understood as well from what you were saying was certainly there is some cooperation taking place right now, or happening already in different aspects. So basically it's just replicating it in another area, putting it on top of climate change. What do we do together on this? Now, what I see a very strong connection is education, understanding, and working in silos, which is basically all connected. It's like insurance risk or risk, insurance resilience. So how do you see the problem? You want to insure it, but you know what will happen eventually next, but you can use it to build a better system, to improve it, to build more resilience into the system. So what would be your take on exchange, working in silos? How can insurance companies eventually get into either going into, I don't know, events or collaborations, just bringing different experts together? Is this happening? From what you know, because you're still very active in the area, and or also from previous experiences, how does it work? And eventually, if you have an answer on this, if you have, would be great. Why don't we see the move yet? What you think might be the biggest challenge, just to, get the first step out, and the next step, and the next step, because we know it's not a simple process. So what would you say, Praveen?
Sure, thank you. You've touched a very important chord in my thought process. See, as I keep saying, insurers deal with a lot of diversity, but they are not inclusive enough, in the sense that we are dealing with virtually everything that happens on this planet. But So we are very good at dealing with all these diverse uh, needs and requirements and whatever. But when it comes to being inclusive, we are terrible. So whether it's women in our workforce, or whether it's dealing with all kinds of customers, whether it's about taking an inclusive decision making, we are failing. I mean, I just gave you so many other examples as to why we don't think in terms of circularity, why don't we think in terms of reputation, why we don't think in terms of people from not so well off economies, what are the implications if we don't include them in the decision making. That is precisely the problem here. So, like, for instance, I'll just give you an example. Over the last 50 years, there has been a five-fold increase in recorded weather, climate, and water-related hazards. You quoted Swiss Re. Yes, they are spot on giving their observations as to what's happening. The number of amount of claims each year resulting from climate change related risks and triggers is just ballooning. With same thing happening with climate, whether it's climate and water related hazards with long lasting socio-economic consequences. We are seeing them, but what are we doing? So the World Meteorological Organization guidelines provide practical information and case studies on how to move from weather forecasts and warnings to coordinated impact forecast and warning services of multiple cascading hazard. I haven't seen, and I hope I'm wrong, any insurer getting excited about these possibilities. So what they should be saying, oh, WMO has come out with this approach, the impact-based forecasting. So can we come out with solutions which, for instance, a tropical cyclone, which could trigger flooding, storm surge, wind damage, and an impact on infrastructure, transport, energy, health system. So why should we look at an individual? Why can't we look at a package deal? Yes, insurers have come out with some kind of, I would say, lip service at this point of time, but it's still not looking at this kind of a risk in a holistic sense. So whether it's from one generation to the other, or which extends from one geography to the other, they're failing. As we still think in terms of 100, 200-year cycles, but the planet is more than 4.5 billion years old, and some cycles will get triggered in very unique ways if we are tinkering with all the planetary parameters. So we are not really being mindful of all that. And unless we do that, we will have these challenges. And if we don't do that, you raised reputation issues, and that fits in here very well. Not only will your immediate reputation in terms of brand or attraction and drive get impacted, but employees, good employees will shirk from joining you. Investors and quality customers may run away. Rating agencies may thereby drop your rating if you're a listed company or even otherwise. More and more litigation and activism will impact you. We are seeing that big corporations are getting impacted everywhere. It's not just in California or Australia or some parts of Europe, which are highly litigious. You will have regulatory pressures. So the regulators are getting very aggressive. Very recently, I wrote a piece on how climate change is impacting the insurance regulations in America.
Yes.
After many, many years, suddenly the American executive has woken up and is insisting that insurers will have to play this role, and they're asking serious questions, and that can lead to asset stranding. And now that phrase also is rarely used by insurers. So when I say asset stranding, is what I mean is not just as an insurer per se, but also as an investor. when you invest in certain assets, which becomes useless because it's suddenly from a land-based asset, it comes in underwater, or the technology becomes so harmful that even politically nobody is willing to touch it. So all the investment that goes into it uh, goes into the drain. So all these are implications. It's not just these, many more, some beyond our imagination, some within our imagination, but we don't use our imagination. So all these have to be seen holistically. And if only, as I said, if while we are good at diversity, if we could leverage it in a way that we become more inclusive in our decision making, we don't need to follow what the rest of the industry is saying. We could also be thinkers, imaginative leaders by ourselves, and contribute to the well-being of the planet. So I think that vision is what which needs to be created, Jana. That's what will make it more impactful, more meaningful, and more mindful.
I mean, Praveen, sorry to interrupt you, but I think that really goes also, I mean, also many different points connected, but it's a lot about, I mean, purpose is sometimes used and abused because purpose is, something very intangible. And, you tend to have companies, of course, at times motivated or proclaim or declared to be motivated by a certain purpose, but many times it's just the financial motivation behind. However, what I see over here in your speech, and especially after explaining how the process works, how the setup works, it is extremely important to, and we see this also progressively being more demanded by the customers, so they understand what is the real value a company or a structure within the system brings. And that's the same for insurance that you just explained to us, pardon me, because you really and this segment has a really important role to play. And now you mentioned several negatives. What may happen if they don't act, or I mean, especially the businesses, but of course, insurance companies as well that are supporting or engaged in this type of collaborations will get negative implications at some point of time. Now, what about looking at it from a more positive perspective, just turning a little bit the perspective and saying, okay, good. Now, this is truly an opportunity. I just recently had a very interesting discussion on this point in particular, which is, it's very provocative what I'm going to say. What type of benefits and advantages does climate change bring? And that pushes us into a very even more uncomfortable area as what we have been before, because the first stage is you are very comfortable in the area where you are. You don't see any climate change. Maybe you are in an area, in a geographical area where it's not impacting you at all. Your business is looking good. You don't see any intersections in the supply chain. You don't feel it yet. Then there is a second stage. You see it already coming in. You see the implications. They are maybe incremental, but you already see some progress. And then the question is the third stage. Okay, we know we are on the way. We already started it. You see the changes all around you. The place is changing. What are you going to do? We need to start thinking as what they call it, out of the box, very innovative, and looking for things that can be avoidable. You mentioned innovation, you mentioned circularity. Is there anything else that you would like to add to this point? I mean, what else can contribute so we really avoid the kind of worst case scenarios, basically, and prepare also every industry to start thinking, innovative.
So thank you. That's a very fascinating question you raised, and it has, again, multiple perspectives. So one is that, you see, nobody today is away from the wrath of climate change. We've seen unfortunate things happening in Europe. People in Germany and everyone thought, oh, climate change, That happens in Africa, that happens in Asia, that happens in maybe Latin America. But suddenly you had floods and water rushing into the basements in places which didn't know any flooding uh, for many generations. And you've had forest fires, you've had all kinds of other storms and weather patterns which have started impacting people in so-called safe areas. So I would think, that as a proper risk management strategy for a customer, as well as uh, for insurers in those places, so-called safe havens, uh, I think no one should take anything for granted anymore. So most of the time, the strategy is around mitigation and very little about adaptation or resilience. You know, so tomorrow, if the global temperatures go up and the Arctic and the Antarctic may melt and the sea levels will rise, uh, sitting in some safe place in North America, you may go underwater. So how do you deal with it? So you have to have insurers who think in terms of not just mitigation, the risk management teams not thinking just in terms of mitigation. They have to think of adapting by anticipating what can happen. And you adaptation is also reactive. So best is to be resilient so that things go wrong, not only just in the place where I am, which was supposedly very safe, but my entire supply chain. My supply chain can be in start from China or India or another parts of Asia, and they all are prone to climate change, and that can impact me. So how can I be more resilient? So all these things have to be thought through on a much wider canvas, not just in a linear sense, but in a multi-dimensional sense. Yeah. The other thing is, again, thanks to your provocation, which I just thought about, is that insurers have been passive and reactive, as you also just agreed. How can they learn from history? So what you can learn is not to repeat the history that you did all this while, and what maybe you are likely to repeat is not some of the old things, but some of the old things in a new form. And what are these two things which worry me most? One is um, carbon credits. For instance, if I am an insurer and you are a customer and you come and tell me, hey, Praveen, I'm going to, I emit so much carbon dioxide every year, but I'm going to buy some forests in India or Africa or somewhere in some remote locations on the planet, and that will give me enough oxygen in terms of balancing the amount of carbon dioxide I emit and the oxygen I generate. So I will go carbon neutral. So please devise a cover. Now, it may make, I may be salivating that, oh, wow, if this is new business opportunity for me, I'm creating new business and I will get so much premium. And the likelihood of loss is very limited. Now, the point is the very basic premise of carbon credits and related space is very, very dubious. So we shouldn't get lured by it just because it is a business opportunity. The other thing is what you call geoengineering. So there's a lot of ideas floating that the planet is getting hot because yes, we are producing more and more greenhouse gases, which is carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxides, and all that. But since we can't control the production of these gases, what is causing the heating is, okay, they form a layer around the planet, but it's the sunlight which is coming, which is heating it. So can we cut the sunlight? So we do some geoengineering, which will reduce the sunlight. Now, that can lead to other problems. But as a typical insurer, I may get excited. Wow, geoengineering, that means new business. That means new premium. That means profits. Shareholders will get excited. I will get to be the world's largest insurer or reinsurer. I think these are things which the earlier issue as well as this have serious moral hazard. So it's not only bad uh, business, but it's also bad because it's not sustainable. And we have to stay clear from them. Howsoever, in the short term, they may mean more money in my kitty. As a result, maybe less claims, maybe as a result, a higher credit rating, maybe as a result, higher, whatever other parameters. These are temptations. But I think insurers have to learn, as I said, not to repeat history, of doing things which are easy and avoiding things which bring in sustainability.
What I would just add to your to the points which you mentioned in terms of carbon credits, a very hot topic, and we're gonna have a separate section on that one and separate episode on that one. Geoengineering also super technology, very science fiction at times, you think, and
Yes.
you just see it, being tested already or piloted somewhere. So yeah, it's exciting. And what I see there is what we need more is transparency. So how much does a project really bring? Because what I would see also as a, and please correct me, as a role of the insurance sector in general is being a kind of invisible frame that you put around the system. Insurance is there to ensure that, nothing bad is going to happen. And if it happens, there are certain implications. That's the job of insurance. Sure. So in this matter, I believe it's a very key element to just look critical also at things, and also put maybe the leading companies or accept the responsibility to be in a leading seat in terms of the discussions, looking at concepts critically, and also being part of the discussions at all. Being there, being present, and also asking the maybe not so pleasant questions about transparency and about real impact. Now, people get very touched and kind of also maybe not in the positive matter, talking about the word touch, but really taking it negatively if you start to criticize any type of effort that is related to climate change. So everybody thinks, and that's the whole greenwashing problem, everybody thinks, yeah, it's going to improve the climate, yeah, it's new technology, yeah, let's do it, and so it's going to be all good, let's just do it. Certainly there is a point in starting to move, starting to do things, definitely agree. But at some point, I also see the problem that, yes, let's still think critically about, or just be open. Let's just be open for the discussion, and let's say, hey, I mean, certainly we need to try out new things. We need to try out new projects. That's what we certainly need to do. Whether we talk about water, whether we talk about air pollution or soil, etc. Many technologies that are coming in, that is amazing to hear that people are thinking this way. They come up with such ideas. You mentioned geoengineering, exciting field, but still go a little bit back into the conservative approach and say, okay, good. Now let's look at the numbers. How much does it bring? How much does it cost us? And how much will it cost us if we just put it all together? And we have many, many people that are super intelligent, super leading experts in areas like analyzing data, analyzing concepts, modeling, as you mentioned, that can kind of really get a kind of certain pathway to get us to the goal, which is limiting global warming, because all of us can agree on one point, or the majority, and more people come to that point that we can just agree we want to limit it. We know we are there. It's going to get worse, maybe not better if we don't do anything. But we are certainly on the, yes, let's do something, and let's do it more and more phase, which I would see. So I would just maybe have also in terms of the timing, I mean, it's a fascinating discussion with you, and so captivating, with all the consequences and implications, really just showcasing how connected the ecosystem is. So even something
Absolutely.
that seems a little bit more, I would even call it bureaucratic at some point.
Oh yes, lots of
Many
bureaucracy.
papers, many forms, many
Exactly.
rules that you need to accomplish to get to something else. Still, it's so important, and it's so connected, and it can make a difference
Yeah,
if you have the right approach, the right purpose, and you are
absolutely.
going after the vision with some actionable concrete steps. Now,
Precisely.
maybe just to conclude, Praveen, is there something encouraging that you can share with us in terms of like historical experience, and to close it on a kind of positive tone, that how can such a type of challenge with so many stakeholders at the table, so much at the stake. I'm not quite sure if that is the right expression, but there is so much we are playing with, and we can potentially also lose, but also many things that we can gain if we approach it the right way. Is there something you can share with us, like to conclude this?
Oh, yeah, so I would use two strong words: courage and imagination. If we bring those two in at the right leadership levels uh, of great companies, I think they can take us there.
Loved it. Loved it.
Hmm.
I mean, there are many opportunities also, what you mentioned, in terms of business is one thing, and we all need to somehow also still bring the value, have the means to continue. But let's be reasonable also in terms of the opportunities, the profitable opportunities that are certainly on the market, and there are not a few. There is a lot of, it's a massive potential if we just pick the right things that we choose to take action on and just implement them into the system. That's where I
Absolutely.
see the benefits are for companies, for businesses, that will be more resilient for any type of situation that is just coming back to your weather events. I mean, with the forecast of 2 Celsius degree, there is 14% of extreme weather events basically being projected to be part of a year cycle. So around 51 days you would happen in a year where you have heavy storm conditions. Now, that is apparently for the building sector, for the housing sector, for public safety, major thing. In terms of insurance, can mean different types of, as you mentioned, bonuses, bonus malus, as you call it,
Yep.
conditions, frameworks that you can play around just to pick and get and help also a little bit the companies that are either working in the field within the supply chain to get the orientation, choose the right thing to do, to first of all be more resilient, survive in the future, have a great reputation, continue being attractive for their customer, and of course being viable as a business as well.
Very true.
So it's a great topic. So many thanks, Praveen. Would there be anything that you would like to still give on the way for businesses, or for even insurance representatives or insurance companies representatives on the way, just to equip them?
Well, I think I've said enough, but since you've provoked me to say something more, all I would say is I think it's time for us as a business to come of age ourselves. And, we should be, what I keep saying, the handmaiden of the industry. We have come to a point where we can be a business which drives change rather than follows the marching orders of someone else. So we need that mindset that yes, we can be leaders, we can be change makers, we can bring uh, sustainability quotient which makes life on this planet viable. I think you need that kind of vision, uh, and that vision need not always be coming from the top. If the young people coming into this industry say that, okay, I mean, one thing is to say, oh, this is very old fashioned, we will not work for it. There can also be an alternative saying that, look, this is a bloody old fashioned industry. I will change it. It's worth doing it, worth giving it a shot. And I think by doing that, we can bring the quantum change this planet requires. So I think it's all how you look at it. But I think there's great opportunity. If this industry doesn't get its act right, either it will disappear. I don't believe it will disappear, but it will get reinvented, because that new thinking will make it happen. So whether you want to be part of that new thinking or you want to be part of redundancy, choice is yours.
So, Praveen, with these words, I would just close the discussion. I think it was, I mean, it was a huge honor to have you in this call today, in this episode. So much value, so much information. So we're gonna also make it available for other viewers to watch it then on YouTube or listen to that also in a podcast format to follow. Once again, much appreciate your time spent here with us, sharing this experience with the audience. And I'm just going to quickly wrap up. We're going to have certainly more episodes with different experts speaking on various topics, all connected to sustainable living, also going forward in the coming weeks and months. So I highly encourage you to connect with us, follow, and also make the circle, make the discussion, as you said, more inclusive, more diverse, and exchange basically more on how the elements are connected. It was a great pleasure, Praveen. Many thanks again. Thank you also to the audience for watching and for listening, for being with us. See you in the next episode of Frogeex.
See you. All the very best. Good luck to you.
Same to you, Praveen. All the best.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.